Hey everyone, welcome to the horror show. I'm Cecil Laird.
I'm Jaime and Fuego here. I'm excited.
And we are here to do a review of the second Nightmare on Elm Street movie. Part of the hype that we're doing for all of the Dylan's New Nightmare coverage is that we're going to be reviewing all the rest of the Nightmare movies. We already reviewed part one, and we did a commentary for it a little bit back, but we're going to go through the rest, starting with part two. And Fuego, what do you have to say about part two?
Part 2 was far better than I ever remembered it, and I actually think I maybe kind of love part 2 at this particular point, especially for the fact that it's not a goofy tone, it is supremely serious. There's been a lot made about the gay undertones or overtones at this particular point, and the fact that I feel like they are pretty evident in a lot of the storytelling, but I think it enhances it. We still have a final girl, even if we do also have kind of a final guy sort of thing, you know, a little like dual sort of bit, and it's violent when it wants to be, and it has some terrific practical, awesome opening sequence, one of the best of the entire franchise. I mean, yeah, I finally appreciate this movie. I feel like I lumped it based on the seriousness and the weirdness and the fact that Craven himself wasn't involved. So I was a little too harsh on this initially.
I was too. It was for a long time my least favorite of the series, including part 6.
That's what I was just about
I used to not like 2 more than I used to not like 6 because of the departure in the, you know, there was something about it that I didn't like, but as I watched it as I was getting older, I'm like, there's so many more layers to this than I saw the first time around. It's still so much darker than the rest of the series. I still maintain that first nightmare with the bus, you know, being suspended in midair and the rest of the ground dropping around it and Freddy coming up one seat at a time, ching, you know, like that was unnerving. I think that this is one of the scariest Nightmare on Elm Street movies. It's one of the most unnerving ones. Oh. And when Freddy comes out of Jesse and murders his best friend, you know, and it's like just disturbing because Jesse's like can't control it and he's just like a shell of nothing and just falls by the wayside when Freddy comes out.
It's legit one of the grossest scenes in the entire series, 100%.
And it's so cool too because, you know, his parents are on the other side of the door, and it was where they really skirted the line where, you know, when Freddy is doing his work, how much of it is actually in effect in reality. Yeah. And this shows that quite a bit. You know, Grady was still seemingly wide awake, and he was just taken out by Freddy because Jesse had fallen asleep. But then you see through the door, you know, the 4 claws coming through the door with the blood and everything. Like, it's such a good kill. This movie was just, it's an amazing Freddy movie that I just did not give the time of day when I was younger. I still think the end is a little bit cheesy. Yeah. Compared to some of the others, but I loved it this time.
Type of ending almost as the first film, where it's
right.
and as they've kind of done in most of those Freddy movies, right? It's like, I don't know, they have to leave the door open for a sequel, so to speak. But yeah, overall impressions, man, I appreciate this so much more so than before. But if we're gonna jump into the story, story is most definitely the fact that this kid Jesse, 5 years after the original Nightmare on Elm Street with, you know, our beloved Nancy and all of those peeps and whatnot, yeah, he's moved into her house, and he has started to have nightmares about this Fred Krueger character. He doesn't know what to call it, at least just yet, or whatever. There's
his girlfriend comes over and finds Nancy's journal.
Yes, which I had completely forgotten about until I rewatched this particular time. I had totally forgot that they start reading her journal and they're analyzing all of the different stuff, and they're just getting some context about what they're experiencing themselves. And yeah, there's I don't know, Mark Patton's character is nuanced enough in the fact that I feel like I'm not gay, but I have a lot of gay friends, and a lot of my gay friends dated women, especially in high school, you know, or like, you know, the opposite sex, which is like social expectant kind of thing. And so I feel like that's why you do have a little bit of like a torn aspect to Jesse's character here, and it adds a completely different dynamic than we've ever seen in a film like this before. And watching it with those eyes for the first time here, story-wise, I appreciated it even more, not just because of that, and not just because of the gore and all that other stuff, but it's very unique, and it gives a perspective we do not often see in horror, which I think is important. So.
Agreed. So yeah, no, as far as the story goes, I think it stands out now as like one of the less cheesy, sort of easy.
No, it's not funny like the
it's
later
not. No,
Friday
this is
films
a
were.
legitimate.
The
this is
first
almost.
three, I think,
this
are
could
the only
almost
serious
be
ones.
argued as a werewolf movie.
In some
Except
ways,
Freddy is the werewolf. You know, it's
Yeah.
the guy turning slowly and turning into something that he can't control that kills people, and it plays so well. And the rawness and the grittiness of this movie really kind of shines through. Yes, there are those gay overtones, especially when he goes to the leather bar at one point and gets caught by his teacher.
Well, yeah, because the coach is the one, the phys ed teacher, whatever the hell you want to call him. You know, he's involved in that area of the academics. There's all of these whispers and little rumored bits about, he goes and he hits up these gay clubs and so on and so forth, and he's really just...
I feel like that scene would dovetail...
crazy.
I feel like that scene would dovetail really well with the Police Academy Blue Oyster cult scenes.
Well, also what happens in the shower with that coach, though. It's like pretty obvious. There's like certain bits where, from a filmmaking standpoint, it's pretty obvious what's being emphasized and extenuated, and I mean... Hey, more power to him for being that bold in a time where it was really pretty unacceptable still.
And a lot of people still didn't pick up on it even at the time, so it was well crafted. So, and I just didn't get it at the time, but it's scarier. And Mark Patton really pulls off the frightened teenager.
When he's covered in sweat and like screaming and everything, and not just where he hits like those higher registers and some of the screams in various parts of the movie. Like, he seems so genuinely terrified, and it's contagious. And I found this to be maybe the scariest entry in the franchise.
It might be.
I must admit.
It might be.
Yeah.
Honestly, yeah. And you know what's funny? I'm excited to watch, because I've rewatched 1 through 3. And I know that there's an emphasis in part 7 as well. I'm anxious to see how many movies the tongue thing carries through. Because there was the tongue from the phone in part 1. There was the long purple tongue in part 2 when he starts to change when he's making out with his girlfriend.
There was some tongue in the comic books that we did.
There was some tongue in the comics. There was the tongue tying up in 3, the guy on the bed. Exactly. So... tongues are big, elongated, gross tongues are a big thing in Freddy.
There's something very phallic to a degree about it, I guess.
True.
And that's probably intentional.
But yeah, I mean, let's segue into the effects, because the effects in this movie are great, and the practical is amazing.
Yeah,
there's really not much by way of CG here.
No, not at all. The scene you alluded to earlier, and it's been shown in some of the promo materials, and I guarantee it was in the trailer at least. And
you're all my children now.
But the one that I'm thinking of is where he's finally trying to break out of Jesse's body, and like the skull coming out of the torso. That may be the most disturbing scene in the entire franchise for me, 100%, because of the fact that the different story dynamic they pursue here is like Freddy trying to possess somebody instead, and it gives the possibility of him getting into the real world, and as he's trying to break into the real world out of this shell, this body, and completely take it over. What
a cool idea, right? Freddy using a body to try and break into the real world. Someone needs to really embellish on that. Someone needs to really embellish on that.
They would.
So let's. I mean, what else? The sound design in these Freddy movies are amazing. The sound design in
this one too
was great, and this also introduced the power plant aspect of the Freddy lore, which carries through to a lot of the movies and a lot of the comics, actually.
Kind of the boiler room.
Because the boiler room is more than just the boiler room in the house.
Yeah.
It's meant to be the power plant. Like, that's the main boiler room that he used.
Yeah, and it's also where he, stowed bodies and stuff, because we see in 3, where Kristen's character walks in and she sees just all the hanging bodies and all this stuff. Yeah. We will get into that in the next review.
Indeed.
But and that's also with the weird dogs with the faces that are in the front, which
Wes
we also
Craven.
See in the comics.
It's called Wes.
Yeah,
it was named Wes. When she walked by, she patted it and was like, "Hi, Wes."
Yeah, and then that's in the comic books that we will get back to. But man, part 2, and it does have some nice allusions to love trying to conquer its way, and even if it's not necessarily romantic love, which is really cool, because the closeness between our 2 main characters is still very real to me, and I don't feel like it's forced, regardless of the actuality of the dynamic between our final girl and Mark Patton as our final boy,
right.
essentially. In this, you can tell that they still have a genuine connection, even if it may not be exactly in a traditional sense. You know,
I agree.
And it plays heavily in the finale too.
And I actually think their chemistry was really good in spite of the fact that he's a gay man.
It's not his preference.
Yeah, so
their little love scene, I was just like, oh, this is like a little more hardcore than Johnny Depp and Nancy, and although not quite as much as Girl Who Got Dragged Across the Ceiling in the first one, but nonetheless.
But Freddy was still really scary in this, and he was still really dark.
I feel like he's scarier in this for whatever reason.
Than part one? Yeah, I can see that.
I really genuinely do. He doesn't have as much to say in as many moments.
He just enters our world and just starts slashing people. And then when fire comes up behind him, he's like, "You are all my children now."
Well, and he has enough power seemingly to like mess with the fences so they're getting like burned and zapped and stuff when they're touching them. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that there's this character beside the pool who comes up to Freddy and he's like, "Hey man, it's okay. You know, you don't have to worry about anything. We're not going to hurt you. What's wrong? Do you want to talk about it?"
Well, I'm gonna hurt you, bitch. You know,
and he throws him into a barbecue grill or something. It's
it just knocks the barbecue grill off, which causes the flame that he stands in front of. Says, "You are all my children now." But it's still a really great Nightmare on Elm Street movie, and I just straight did not give it the credit that it deserved for so many years. Honestly, until the last 5 years. Honestly, I'll be straight up. I didn't start to appreciate it until after we actually interviewed Mark Patton about it
for the channel,
and then like my viewpoint about it changed. I was like, I feel averse to the subtlety. Yeah. Like I don't know. I was just blind to it before. But I really dug it. I think number 2 is one of the strongest entries. I think we're gonna have to do a ranking at the end of these reviews. We definitely have to. Yeah, so this is gonna rank a lot higher than it used to for me.
Same
for sure.
100%.
So I'm excited to do that. So what do you guys think of part 2, A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2? Let us know in the comments down below. We got Freddy behind us saying hello. He's gonna wave. Hiya. Hiya, bitch. So yeah, his arm's not strong enough to hold it up like that without some movie magic.
He's getting back into shape. He hasn't been on screen
he's
in like
working
a decade.
On it. He's working on it. So thank you guys very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, click that like button and subscribe to make sure you don't miss more updates along the Nightmare on Elm Street movie review variety. We're going to be reviewing the movies. We're going to be reviewing the comics. And if you didn't know, we actually launched a Indiegogo campaign for a movie called Dylan's New Nightmare. It is a fan film, a short film that is produced by Vincent DeSanti of Womp Stomp Films that did Never Hike Alone, shot by Renee Rivas of The Spirit of Haddonfield, and Miko Hughes himself is returning to reprise his role of Dylan Porter. We made our own Nightmare Glove. There is a Indiegogo campaign going right now that you guys can subscribe to. It's only been going for about 5 days as of this review.
Yeah.
So please go and support it if you're into the idea. Thank you very much for watching. We're going to be dropping reviews of every Nightmare movie throughout the next 4 weeks. So thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I've been Cecil Laird.
Gracias, Jaime Fuego.
And remember, stay scared.